Peter Obi's 2027 mission. Can one term save Nigeria from collapse? Welcome to the Bold African Voice, BAV, where Africa speaks truth to power. I'm Abdul Karim Kargbo, born and raised in Africa. In today's feature, we spotlight the political comeback of Nigeria's reformist icon, Peter Obi. With a promise of just one term to fix Nigeria's chaos, is this the leadership Africa's most populous nation desperately needs? Stay with us as we break it all down, critically, boldly, and with a continent-wide lens. A new shot at the presidency amid national decay. In a country grappling with spiraling insecurity, economic collapse, and a trust deficit in political leadership, Peter Obi, Labour Party's 2023 presidential candidate, has re-emerged with a bold declaration. He will run again in 2027 and serve only a single four-year term to rescue Nigeria. Speaking to his supporters during a public X Space session, Obi outlined his vision for reform, his uncompromising stance on governance priorities, and his position on coalition politics. Obi's message resonated strongly with Nigerians at home and abroad, particularly among youth, professionals, and civil society actors disillusioned by the status quo. As Nigeria continues to battle mass killings in states like Benue, Zamfara, and Borno, economic stagnation, and elite political aloofness, Obi's narrative of urgency and personal sacrifice has reignited conversations about alternative leadership. But can he turn rhetoric into reality? Obi's strategic positioning, rejecting alliance with Atiku and insisting on issues-based coalitions. In a pointed clarification, Obi dismissed widespread speculations about a joint presidential ticket with former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. According to Ibrahim Umar, spokesman for Peter Obi Media Reach, POMR, the Labour Party leader maintained that his participation in coalition talks is only to rescue Nigeria from the drift and align with patriotic Nigerians, not for political convenience. If the coalition is not about stopping the killings in Benue, Zamfara, how to revive our economy, count me out, Obi declared. This principled stand reflects Obi's consistent political messaging, which centers on pragmatic problem-solving over transactional politics. It also positions him as a credible alternative to the dominant APC and PDP machines, both widely accused of failing Nigeria for over 2 decades. A nation at war, security, corruption, and governance in crisis. Peter Obi described Nigeria as a nation at war, not just due to insurgency, banditry, and kidnappings, but due to structural governance failure. His promise to bring stability within 2 years hinges on 3 key priorities in his first 100 days. 1. Security. With over 63,000 Nigerians killed by non-state actors between 2015 and 2023, according to SBM intelligence, Obi's focus on security is timely. He promises a hands-on approach, in contrast to President Tinubu's alleged detachment. 2. Education and poverty eradication. Nigeria has one of the highest out-of-school children populations globally, estimated at over 20 million, according to UNICEF. Obi's call to redirect funds into these sectors echoes global best practices. 3. Cost-cutting and anti-corruption. By pledging to exclude his family from state funds and banning party defection among elected officials, Obi aligns with citizen demands for integrity and accountability. His criticism of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's prolonged international visits, including an extended stay in St. Lucia, reflects Obi's broader frustration with what he sees as an unresponsive elite more interested in optics than outcomes. Leaders of Nigeria should sit down in Nigeria and fix Nigeria, he stated, citing Tinubu's refusal to spend time in any state outside Lagos since assuming office. The Labour Party crisis, Obi's internal struggles, and the Inex saga Obi also addressed internal turmoil within the Labour Party. He emphasized ongoing efforts to push INEC to recognize the Nnedi Usman-led Labour Party, citing Supreme Court backing. This reflects deeper fractures within Nigeria's third-force political structures, many of which lack institutional depth, legal clarity, and elite consensus. Such internal conflicts have historically undermined reformist movements across Africa, where emerging parties struggle to maintain coherence and legal legitimacy in the face of entrenched incumbency. For Obi's campaign to succeed, Labour Party must resolve its identity and leadership crisis quickly and convincingly. Rotation, representation, and the ethnic equation in Nigerian politics. In a country deeply divided along ethnic and regional lines, Obi's support for rotational leadership between the North and South is both strategic and symbolic. Having implemented rotational leadership in Anambra State during his tenure as governor, Obi seeks to signal inclusivity and fairness, a necessary counterbalance in a nation where elections often hinge more on identity than ideology. This move resonates beyond Nigeria. Across West Africa, leaders have weaponized ethnicity to divide electorates and justify term extensions or political manipulation. Obi's emphasis on equitable rotation presents an opportunity for Nigeria to lead by example in promoting inclusive governance across the continent. Comparative African perspective, the search for credible alternatives. Peter Obi's rise mirrors a broader African trend, the emergence of outsider or reformist candidates tapping into public frustration with elite failure. In Kenya, Raila Odinga's consistent opposition to ruling parties, despite repeated electoral losses, shows the power and limitations of political persistence. In Zambia, Hakainde Hichilema's eventual victory after multiple losses demonstrates that change is possible when citizen discontent meets electoral strategy. However, as in Uganda, Zimbabwe, or even Tunisia, state capture, judicial manipulation, and security-led repression often derail reformist momentum. For Obi to succeed, he must not only campaign, but prepare for structural resistance from within Nigeria's institutions, including the Electoral Commission, judiciary, and the political elite. Forward-looking questions. Can Peter Obi translate moral credibility into electoral viability amid institutional sabotage? Will Nigeria's youth, mobilized in 2023 through the Docs Obedient movement, retain their energy and commitment in 2027? What electoral and judicial reforms are necessary to ensure the 2027 elections do not repeat the controversies of 2023? Obi's insistence that votes will count in 2027 reflects not just hope, but a recognition of the systemic failures that marred the last election. According to the European Union Election Observation Mission, EU-EOM, the 2023 elections lacked transparency and were characterized by logistical failures, violence, and result manipulation. Youth mobilization and diaspora engagement, the backbone of Obi's 2027 strategy. Peter Obi's renewed campaign is banking heavily on a demographic asset that proved instrumental in 2023, the Nigerian youth. With over 70% of the population under the age of 30, Nigeria has one of the youngest populations globally, and this age group overwhelmingly supported Obi during the last election through the now iconic Obedient movement. However, turning youthful enthusiasm into electoral victory requires more than online activism. The 2023 elections revealed a major disconnect between digital mobilization and polling booth realities. Voter suppression, poor logistics, and institutional bias rendered many young voices unheard. To overcome this, Obi must strengthen grassroots structures across the 774 local governments in Nigeria, especially in rural areas where digital access is limited but votes are decisive. Invest in civic education to equip young Nigerians with the tools to protect their votes and demand accountability. Create alliances with student unions, youth-led CSOs, and professional bodies, many of which feel alienated from mainstream politics. Meanwhile, Obi's repeated engagements with Nigerians in the diaspora, who contribute billions annually through remittances, over $20 billion in 2022 per World Bank data, signal a unique electoral strategy. Though they are disenfranchised by law, the diaspora has the financial, technical, and media capacity to drive Obi's message, lobby international watchdogs, and support voter awareness back home. In his recent statement, Obi emphasized that nobody abroad takes you seriously if you don't have a stable government. This acknowledgement reflects his understanding of international legitimacy, not just for investment attraction, but also for safeguarding democratic processes. The Labour Party's institutional capacity, Achilles' heel or dark horse. Despite Obi's popularity, the Labour Party's internal disarray remains a pressing concern. The legitimacy battle involving the Usman-led faction and other splinter groups undermines voter confidence and organizational cohesion. In political systems like Nigeria's, where patronage, state control of resources, and elite networks dominate, a fragmented opposition party can easily be co-opted or neutralized. Unless the party swiftly reconciles warring factions, establishes transparent leadership structures, and builds a broad-based national coalition, it risks becoming a liability rather than a vehicle for change. The Obi campaign must take lessons from Zambia's United Party for National Development, UPND, which overcame decades of opposition by maintaining party unity and investing in grassroots infrastructure long before its eventual win in 2021. Coalition politics. Will Nigeria's third force finally unite? Peter Obi's remarks also suggest conditional openness to coalition building, though he has clearly stated he will walk away from alliances not grounded in substance. If the coalition is not about reviving the economy and stopping the killings, count me out. This principle-based coalition approach presents both opportunity and challenge. On one hand, it can attract respected reformers from across the political spectrum, including disenchanted members of APC and PDP. On the other, it risks fragmentation if ideological cohesion cannot be maintained. In Senegal, opposition coalitions like Yewi Askanwi successfully ousted long-standing power structures by uniting under clear anti-corruption and youth-centered agendas. Nigeria's third force actors, including figures like Omoyele Sowore, Kingsley Moghalu, and even technocrats, could learn from this by forming a patriotic Nigerian alliance focused on electoral reform, security, and governance transparency. But timing is key. Coalition talks must conclude well ahead of 2027, with joint primaries, shared financing, and agreed leadership structures to avoid the pitfalls of rushed alignments that doomed many reformist efforts in Africa, such as the failed Kenyan NASA coalition in 2017. Electoral reform ensuring 2027 is not a repeat of 2023. A central concern for Peter Obi, and indeed for any credible challenger, is whether Nigeria's electoral system will be fit for purpose in 2027. The 2023 general elections, according to the European Union Election Observation Mission, EU-EOM, and YIAGA Africa, suffered from INEC's failure to transmit results in real time via BVS technology, undermining transparency. Low voter turnout, 27%, the lowest since 1999. Pockets of violence, intimidation, and voter suppression, especially in opposition strongholds. Partisan law enforcement interference, including arrests and harassment of opposition supporters. Peter Obi has called for doing things differently in 2027, implying a preemptive strategy that goes beyond legal appeals after the fact. His team must prioritize legal pressure and civic campaigns to compel INEC to fully implement the Electoral Act and improve result transmission, early training of polling agents and deployment of volunteers to monitor and document electoral irregularities, international engagement, including early observer mission presence and pressure on INEC from global actors to adhere to democratic norms. Moreover, the National Assembly's inability or refusal to pass more robust electoral reforms should become a key campaign issue, highlighting the complicity of the legislative elite in sustaining a flawed democracy. Comparative continental lens, Nigeria's pivotal role in Africa's democratic future. Peter Obi's bid is not just a domestic matter, it has Pan-African significance. Nigeria, often called the giant of Africa, influences democratic norms across West Africa. Its failure or success impacts the entire ECOWAS bloc, where democracy has suffered significant reversals in Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and recently, Niger. If Nigeria, Africa's most populous country and largest economy, can organize a credible transition in 2027, it would send a strong signal to the rest of the continent that peaceful change is possible without coups or dynastic politics. Conversely, another manipulated or violence-tainted election could further erode the legitimacy of elections across Africa, justifying more authoritarianism and military takeovers. The African Union and ECOWAS must therefore play a proactive, not reactive role in ensuring democratic integrity in Nigeria. Inside Obi's policy proposals, what would a Peter Obi presidency actually look like? As Peter Obi gears up for the 2027 presidential race, his campaign is beginning to crystallize around key thematic areas: security, education, poverty eradication, economic reform, and anti-corruption. These are not new talking points, but the promise of implementation, speed, and accountability in the first 100 days sets Obi apart in a political system plagued by inertia. Let us unpack what a Peter Obi presidency might look like if these promises are pursued seriously. 1. Security, from rhetoric to results. Obi has identified security as the most immediate national emergency, pledging to restore stability in Nigeria within 2 years. With nearly 40% of Nigeria's territory affected by armed conflict, banditry, terrorism, and separatist unrest, according to the Global Terrorism Index, this is an ambitious promise. Key elements of Obi's likely security strategy: decentralized policing. Obi has long advocated for state policing, in line with global best practices in federal systems. This would enhance rapid response and localized intelligence gathering. Military reform and equipment modernization. He may pursue budget reallocation to support modern equipment and real-time surveillance systems, e.g., drone operations in Zamfara and Borno. Civil-military integration. Emphasis on rebuilding trust between security forces and communities by ending impunity and instituting human rights training across security agencies. National Intelligence Fusion Center. Modeled after systems in the United States and South Africa, this could coordinate security data across agencies to proactively prevent attacks. In contrast to the Buhari and Tinubu administrations, which critics argue have politicized appointments and undermined service delivery, Obi's background as a hands-on governor may lend credibility to a results-oriented security agenda. 2. Education reform, laying the foundation for human capital development. With over 20 million out-of-school children, Nigeria faces an education crisis. Obi's vision centers on free and compulsory basic education and refocusing national investment on skill-based learning. Expected policy moves under Obi: massive investment in public school infrastructure, especially in northern Nigeria, where insecurity has closed thousands of schools. Revamp of teacher training colleges and incentive systems to attract qualified educators into rural communities. Integration of digital learning tools and vocational training into secondary school curricula, echoing models used in Rwanda and Kenya. Public-private partnerships, PPP, with edtech firms to roll out education access programs in underserved areas. His approach reflects what he implemented in Anambra, where his administration was credited with improving school performance in WAEC rankings and significantly increasing student-teacher ratios. 3. Poverty eradication and economic productivity. Beyond tokenism, Obi has promised to put food on the table and reverse Nigeria's slide into multidimensional poverty, which now affects over 133 million Nigerians, per the National Bureau of Statistics, (NBS). His economic vision appears to hinge on production-led growth and fiscal prudence, revitalization of key industrial sectors, agriculture, textiles, and manufacturing, through targeted subsidies and export incentives, support for MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises, with single-digit interest loans and startup-friendly tax regimes, rural economy transformation through mechanized farming clusters modeled on Ethiopia's agricultural growth program, expansion of the National Social Investment Programs, NSIP, but redesigned to eliminate leakages and politicization. He has also spoken about cutting government costs and redirecting funds to the poor. This includes reducing the size of the presidential convoy, abolishing luxury spending, and enforcing asset declaration laws for public officials. 4. Anti-corruption and governance reform, a cultural shift or a political risk. Obi's strongest declarations center on ending systemic corruption. He pledged that no member of his family would be involved in governance and has promised to cut costs and shun corruption from day one. His approach includes overhauling the EFCC and ICPC to focus on high-impact investigations and ensure political neutrality, digitalizing public procurement and government payments to eliminate middlemen and ghost contractors, open budgeting and real-time fiscal tracking dashboards, similar to initiatives in Estonia and Georgia, constitutional amendment to prevent party defection post-election, a reform that would curb opportunistic political cross-carpeting. Yet this is where his presidency may face the greatest resistance. Nigeria's political class, built on patronage networks, will likely sabotage such reforms without massive grassroots and institutional support. 5. Foreign policy, restoring Nigeria's image and regional relevance. Peter Obi's criticism of Tinubu's prolonged foreign travel and the implication that Nigeria lacks leadership at home aligns with growing concerns about Nigeria's declining regional influence. Under Obi, foreign policy might prioritize economic diplomacy over elitist travel, with a focus on trade, diaspora relations, and attracting FDIs, foreign direct investment, rebuilding ECOWAS credibility, especially in light of the Sahel coups and Nigeria's compromised leadership role, strengthening regional peacekeeping capacity in collaboration with the African Union, positioning Nigeria as a leader in climate resilience, leveraging its vast arable land and youth innovation hubs. This would reflect a return to the activist diplomacy of the 1970s-90s, when Nigeria played a pivotal role in stabilizing West Africa and shaping Africa's multilateral agenda. Political risks and institutional constraints. Can Obi deliver without a National Assembly majority? Even if Peter Obi wins the 2027 presidency, governing Nigeria without a majority in the National Assembly would severely constrain his agenda. Both the APC and PDP maintain entrenched influence in the legislature and across state governments. Potential implications: legislative gridlock, especially on constitutional reforms and budget allocations. Judicial pushback or sabotage if appointees of previous administrations remain loyal to partisan interests. Sabotage by governors and civil service insiders, many of whom benefit from the bloated status quo. To overcome this, Obi would need to forge strategic alliances, particularly with reform-minded senators and representatives across party lines, leverage executive orders and administrative discretion, especially on procurement, appointments, and public service reform, mobilize public pressure through town halls, citizen engagement, and the media to shame obstructionist politicians. If managed well, this could set a precedent for a citizen driven presidency in Africa, where leaders are held accountable to the people, not party godfathers. Assessing Peter Obi's electoral viability, can he defeat the APC and PDP in 2027? While Peter Obi's vision and policy agenda appear clear, the biggest hurdle remains electoral viability, a cold, hard analysis of political arithmetic and Nigeria's entrenched electoral geography. Can the Labour Party, with limited national structures and an ongoing internal leadership crisis, build a broad based coalition capable of defeating the two dominant parties, the APC and PDP, in 2027? Electoral math and regional realities. Nigeria's presidential election is governed by a two-tier system. A candidate must receive a plurality of votes nationwide and at least 25% of the vote in at least 24 of Nigeria's 36 states, including the FCT. This makes it difficult for regionally or ethnically concentrated candidates to win, as they must demonstrate national appeal. In 2023, Peter Obi won all of the Southeast, some of the South-South, and parts of the North-Central. Major urban centers like Lagos and Abuja reflect strong urban youth support. But he underperformed in the Northwest and Northeast, where voting remains heavily influenced by traditional patronage networks and ethnic bloc voting. To win in 2027, Obi must expand aggressively into northern Nigeria, especially among Hausa Fulani and Kanuri populations, which represent the largest voting blocs. Strengthen ties with northern Christian minorities in Plateau, Benue, Taraba, and southern Kaduna, who are increasingly disillusioned with both APC and PDP. Retain the urban youth vote, which is becoming the largest and most mobile voting demographic in cities like Kano, Kaduna, Port Harcourt, and Ibadan. Labour Party's structural challenges. Obi's electoral ambition is complicated by the Labour Party's weak national structure. Unlike the APC and PDP, which have decades of entrenched machinery, Labour lacks functional state chapters in many key battlegrounds, funding mechanisms that can withstand a multi-year campaign, consistent ideology and leadership, which has led to internal disputes and court cases. To overcome these, the Obi campaign must finalize its reconciliation with the Usman-led Labour Party faction to stabilize the party, forge issue-based coalitions with other third force movements like PRP, ADC, SDP, and activist-based civic groups, recruit experienced election strategists and local leaders capable of mobilizing rural and peri-urban voters, often ignored in elite-driven politics. This requires urgent organizational work, not in 2026, but now. Advice to African leaders, the Peter Obi test, and the future of democracy. Peter Obi's re-entry into the 2027 Nigerian presidential race is not just a test of personal ambition, it is a litmus test for the future of African democracy. His candidacy offers a rare alternative, a reform-minded civilian technocratic politician willing to serve only one term, promising real institutional change, and challenging the business-as-usual political culture that dominates African politics. To African leaders, current and aspiring, the lessons are clear. 1. Governance is not performance art. Legitimacy comes from staying connected to citizens, solving real problems, and showing up, especially in times of crisis. 2. Democratic reform cannot wait. African electoral commissions must prioritize transparency, digital integrity, and voter protection before elections, not after crises. 3. Power must serve people, not parties. Citizens are increasingly aware, connected, and ready to hold leaders accountable. Any leader ignoring this shift does so at their peril. 4. Regional stability depends on national integrity. The erosion of democracy in Nigeria would ripple through West Africa, weakening ECOWAS and emboldening authoritarianism. 5. Youth inclusion is non-negotiable. Leaders who fail to engage and empower Africa's youth, its largest demographic, risk political irrelevance or mass revolt. Summary of key messages. Peter Obi's 2027 candidacy represents a serious reformist challenge to Nigeria's political establishment, focused on security, education, economic revitalization, and anti-corruption. He pledges a nonviolent one-term presidency rooted in governance, accountability, and citizen engagement. Labour Party faces internal and structural weaknesses that must be resolved to turn digital enthusiasm into electoral victory. Nigeria's future, and by extension, West Africa's stability, depends on restoring trust in democracy and delivering real reforms. Obi's campaign offers a model of principled leadership African citizens increasingly demand, but its success depends on grassroots mobilization, coalition building, and institutional resilience. As Nigeria approaches a critical juncture in 2027, the Peter Obi movement may prove to be more than a campaign. It could become a catalyst for democratic reinvention across the continent. The question remains, will Nigeria seize this opportunity, or will it retreat once again into the comfort of failed systems? Thank you for watching The Bold African Voice, BAV. If you believe Africa deserves better leaders and Nigeria deserves better governance, don't just watch, get involved. Like, share, and subscribe to The Bold African Voice, BAV, for more fearless analysis from across the continent. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Can Peter Obi truly bring the change Nigeria needs in just one term? Until next time, stay bold, stay informed, and stay African.